Have you ever wondered why we all experience our mourning and our grief in different ways after the death of a loved one? If this question has been on your mind, then today's episode is for you, my friend. We will explore some of the factors that influence why you and I grieve differently. Additionally, we will explore the examples of two prominent figures to illustrate how two people grieving the same person can process their grief and their pain in distinct ways. And we're going to look at today at the outspoken political commentator Candace Owens and Erika Kirk, Charlie Kirk's widow. Hi, my friends. Welcome to another episode of the Growth After Loss podcast. I'm Dr. Marquez, a personal growth educator after loss. I am so happy that you are here with me today, my friend, to talk about why you and I may grieve differently and process our pain differently after the death of a loved one. We had to take a little bit of a pause on this show because I have some very exciting news. I actually launched my new emotional processing workshop where you can learn different adaptation strategies to help you process your own pain after the loss of your loved one. And I'm very excited to share this with you because it is a more personalized approach to help you better support yourself after your loss. Now, the topic that I want to talk on this episode holds a very deep and personal significance for me. And I know that it resonates profoundly with many of my own clients as well. It revolves around the expectations society places on individuals following the loss of a loved one. Personally, I have faced judgment for the choices I made during my own grief journey, especially in my early years. Choices that were healthier for me to engage on and and they were beneficial for my daughter as well. Now, these choices and decisions that I made seem to clash with conventional expectations about how one should grieve and how we should mourn our losses. Now, I can tell you that this particular judgment added layers of complexity to my own grief that I was already having difficulty processing. And I can say that many of my clients have shared similar experiences, feeling the weight of external pressures from friends, family, or even social media. These pressures include to conform to a specific narrative of how we should mourn our pain. This societal scrutiny becomes even more evident when we observe public figures navigating their grief in the spotlight, as seen in the recent discussions surrounding Candace Owens and Erika Kirk. Their situation has sparked a lot of conversation online, particularly on platforms like YouTube, where viewers are dissecting and contrasting their approaches to how they are expressing their grief. Recently, I watched several episodes of Candace Owens' show in where she talks about her sadness over losing her friend Charlie Kirk. Now, she compares her grieving process to that of Erika Kirk, which again is Charlie Kirk's widow. What's notable about this is how different two people can grieve the same person. And that's what I want to talk about today. Because I want to clarify that this discussion is not about criticizing or dissecting how either of these women are expressing their grief. Because at the end of the day, both are navigating the profound sorrow of losing someone they dearly love. However, today I want to showcase and highlight how their experiences serve as a compelling example of the diverse ways people process pain, especially the pain after the loss of a loved one. To illustrate this point further, I'd like to share a clip from one of Candace's recent shows, which captures her perspective on this situation. So here's the clip.
I was totally in a cloud of grief by myself when all of that went down. Okay, you remember I had to go away to Wyoming just to breathe, um, to process, to get closer to accepting that it was real. I went away for 2 weeks. I didn't really catch the fact that it was an in-person meeting until later. 8 days after his public assassination, she sits down for a piece with the publication that hated Charlie the entire time he was alive. New York Times was constantly writing hit pieces about Charlie Kirk, or pieces that just were not kind or favorable to Charlie Kirk. So it's an interesting decision. And reading the article, or rereading, because somebody said you should actually go back and revisit everything that transpired in the days after, and you kind of have new eyes, and that's very true. But in reading that article in retrospect, something that I am particularly struck by is the fact that she describes suddenly being forced into the single mother position as the quote unquote least traumatizing thing. Becoming a single mother suddenly, 8 days later, she describes it as the least traumatizing thing. Again, that's an exact quotation. I'll read it. You can see it. They're going into this. They're speaking about Trump's energy and his tone toward her on phone calls. And it reads, quote, from her, "The president's tone," she said, "was soft and embracing. I could tell he wanted to hug me." Others have responded in the same manner to Ms. Kirk, now left to care for a 3-year-old daughter and a 1-year-old son. That new life, Ms. Kirk said, quote, "is actually the least traumatizing thing for me, since she herself has been raised by her mother after their parents divorced when she was young." And we're just supposed to pretend that that's completely normal or whatever. I would figure maybe the least traumatizing bit would be something more mundane, maybe along the lines, if this was a thing, if Charlie constantly filled up her gas tank and someone was like, well, who's going to fill up your gas tank? She might reply, that's actually the least traumatizing thing. I don't even care about that. That's just me filling up my car. That would be like the least traumatizing thing. Becoming a single mother after your husband is horrifically assassinated, realizing that your children are going to grow up without a father who toured the world and spoke about the importance of fatherhood and relayed the statistics pertaining to the youth that grow up without their fathers in the home. I would describe that as very traumatizing. I think across the board, that's a traumatizing thing, not the least traumatizing thing by any stretch of an imagination. Anyway, we are now in season 7, episode 4 of Everybody Grieves Differently, but that's weird.
What were your thoughts on the contrasting ways these two women responded to the tragic loss of the late Charlie Kirk? Now, have you ever felt judged for the way you've processed your own pain after the loss of your loved one? I know I have. Now, let's take a moment to recap what you just watched. In this clip, Candace shared her profound sorrow after her dear friend passed away in an event that shocked the nation. Now, if you're not familiar with Charlie Kirk, he was one of the founders and the CEO of Turning Point USA, who was horrifically assassinated at Utah Valley University. Now, in the wake of this tragedy, Candace expressed a deep need to retreat back to Wyoming, seeking solace and the time to come to grips with the overwhelming reality of her loss. In contrast, just 8 days later, Erika was in front of the cameras giving an in person interview about Charlie Kirk. And as I mentioned earlier, we aren't here to debate which grieving process is correct because both women lost someone they deeply cherished. And the nature of their relationships with Charlie was uniquely theirs. So, the essence of my point today is that both Candace and Erica are navigating the aftermath of Mr. Kirk's death very differently. And this is shaped by their individual bonds with him, their experiences, overall life experiences. Erika was able to give interviews after the sudden death of Charlie Kirk. Candace needed more space and time to process what had happened to her friend. Now, it can be tempting to proclaim that Candace's response is more conventional than Erika's, but we must recognize that we are only scratching the surface here. Behind closed doors, Erika's and Candace's grief is deeply personal, and it could be layered with complexities that are only truly known to them. So, why do we all grieve differently? So let's explore this question. Why do we all grieve differently? And I want to break it down into several key factors. First, let's consider our individual circumstances, which can play a significant role in how we process our grief, that internal pain that we feel after we experience a loss. Now, each relationship is unique, containing its own history and dynamics and emotional investments with the deceased. For example, someone who had a complicated relationship with the deceased may experience feelings of guilt, anger, or even regret alongside their sorrow. In contrast, if there was violence or abuse in the relationship, that person may feel a sense of relief mixed with sadness. Alternatively, someone who shared a close supportive bond with the same individual that passed might primarily focus on the loss and the longing for that person. Another component that can impact the way we process our pain after loss is the nature of the death. Whether it was expected or sudden can greatly influence our grief. And let me tell you why. Because a sudden loss can leave us feeling shocked and unprepared, while an anticipated loss might allow for a different kind of mourning process, including experiencing anticipatory grief. Now, next, let's look and discuss coping mechanisms. So, each of us have developed our own unique ways of how we deal with stress in life and how we learn or lack of engage in emotional regulation. So, this is not something that happens overnight. A study published in Sage Journals from 2016 highlighted this connection, revealing that various personality factors play a crucial role in determining our coping styles. The study suggests that individuals with more resilient personalities may approach grief with a proactive mindset. This means seeking support and finding meaning in their experiences, while those with different personality characteristics might struggle more, possibly withdrawing into their feelings or experiencing prolonged distress. Some of you may lean on your community, which can involve family and friends, to help you find solace in sharing your feelings after the loss of your loved one. And that's a way to process your pain. While some of you might withdraw and process your grief internally. For instance, our personality traits can significantly shape how we navigate the emotional landscape of loss. This interplay between personality and coping mechanisms underscores the profound impact of our inherent traits. Another factor that impacts on how we may process our grief is our culture. Different cultures have distinct traditions around mourning, and some may emphasize collective grieving and memorial rituals, while others might prioritize privacy or personal reflection. Now, understanding these cultural backgrounds can help us better appreciate how our own perspectives on grief have been shaped. If you grew up in a culture that openly discusses loss and death, then you might find it easier to be able to express and articulate your grief. Conversely, if your background emphasizes emotional restraint, you might struggle to voice that pain that you're feeling, those thoughts that you're experiencing. Another crucial factor to consider is our past encounters with loss, trauma, or mental illnesses. Now, these experiences can profoundly shape our responses and perceptions after we experience loss. For instance, the grief of losing a loved one can leave a mark on our emotional landscape, affecting our ability to trust or connect with others. Mental illnesses adds another layer of complexity to our processing when we experience the loss of a loved one. This complex dimension often intertwines with the experience that we are already going through, which can complicate our emotional health and impact how we cope after loss. So, understanding how these factors interrelate is essential for fostering resilience and supporting adaptation. To wrap up this episode on why we all experience mourning and grief in different ways, I want to clarify that neither Candace or Erika are wrong in the way they are expressing their own grief, whether they're doing interviews and carrying on with an organization or needing to take some time off to process what happened. Grief is a very deeply personal experience, and the way we express that internal pain, how it comes out, how we mourn, can be shaped by various aspects of our lives, as we've covered some of those today in today's episode. And we may follow different paths, but it's essential to honor that diversity and allow yourself to grieve in your own way and seek support when needed. Now, if you want to learn more about how you can leverage your personality to better support yourself after loss with the adaptation process and coping strategies, then I want to invite you to check out my new emotional processing workshop, where you can participate from the comfort of your own home and at your own pace. In this workshop, you can learn more about yourself and discover what might work for you to help you process your own grief. Emotional processing was actually one of the key concepts in my research that contributed to the personal growth of my participants after the loss of their loved one. So please remember, it's okay not to have all the answers, my friend. Grief has no timeline, it has no stage, and it often ebbs and flows. So, what's crucial is giving yourself the grace and the time to feel whatever emotions arise and to nurture your pain with the support you may need. Thank you for joining me today on another episode of the Growth After Loss podcast. If you found this episode helpful, please consider sharing it with someone who might need it. Also, please go ahead and check out my emotional processing workshop and see if that can be helpful for you. And remember, your feelings are valid and you are not alone in this journey. Take care.